Josephine and got a sausage? No, it's like a little biscuit thing.
Okay, apologize for a couple minute delay. I had a meeting that ran over, so let's get this thing a-rolling. Want to start our workshop off here. We have an interview scheduled with a council candidate, and we're going to, where is our interview question? Okay, so this candidate is actually interviewing for two different positions, one for Ward 3 councillor as well as the budget committee. So if we kind of speaking to council here, is if we can start off with, let's interview her for the Ward 3 council position first, and then we can roll into open a question period for her possibility to be appointed for the budget committee, if that's all right with everybody. And with that aspect, I will ask Nancy to step up to the podium and introduce yourself. And please give us a small entry onto why you want to become city councilor for to represent Ward 3. You might need to push the button on there so the red light turns on.
Should always be on.
Oh.
There's a black tape. There you go. Now you can hear me. You could have probably heard me without the microphone. Thanks for letting me come in today because I am leaving on Thursday for vacation and wouldn't be here for the interview process next week, so I appreciate that. I originally, back in January, submitted the application for the Budget Committee, and then 2 days later, I think it was 2 days later, the open position, Ward 3, and realized that I lived in Ward 3. I hadn't really paid a lot of attention to that. So I thought that since I now have the opportunity in my own life to get a little bit more involved in the city government and some other community activities, that this would be a good time to do this. It just was good timing for me and hopefully for you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So I'm going to turn it over to council here, and we'll run through a couple questions for you. Anybody want to start with Joel?
I appreciate you applying, Nancy. It's the strength of our country that we have citizens like you that do that. So in group dynamics, a group can act a lot of different ways. Do you feel that it's appropriate for me to make up my mind on issues before I come to the meeting, before I hear public input, and before I hear other councilors who disagree with me?
One of the drawbacks to a council such as this, public meeting laws, is that you don't get the opportunity to talk about a lot of things before you're in an environment where you have to make a decision. And I do feel that overall that's kind of a drawback. But personally, I spend a lot of time, and I'm sure that all of you do too, researching and trying to understand as all sides of whatever the situation is where you need to make a decision. There's certainly a lot of information available in the public realm, and hopefully that would enable me to at least have a good idea of what I feel about a subject, but the public input is so important. And then, of course, you have input from the community. I'm sure you're being contacted all the time by members of the community, and they are providing input. So should you make up your mind before you come to a meeting? Probably not finally, because you still need to hear the input of the people who do attend the public meetings.
Okay, thank you. The second part of the question was, so people who disagree with me, what kind of value do they add to the discussion?
I think it's important to hear all aspects of community opinion. Even when they disagree with you, there's frequently something that they are saying that has a kernel of information that could be important in making a decision.
Okay, thank you, Nancy.
Perfect. Thanks. Rick?
Thank you, Nancy, for applying. What do you see as the major challenges that the city faces?
There's a number of major challenges. As I said in my application, I kind of lump a lot of them into economic development, because if we can keep our community growing in the right kinds of ways, then that will actually help address a lot of the problems. If we have a lot of very great small businesses, we need to find ways to encourage them and help them stay in business, because they are our local employers. I would love to see ways that we could encourage higher paying businesses to move into town so that we can help our residents make more money. When they make more money, they're going to spend more money. And they're going to, if we have the right kind of venues for them, they're going to spend the money in town. I think there's a lot of aspects that fall under economic development that will help us address a lot of the problems that we have.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other questions? Rob?
Yeah, thanks for applying for both positions. It seems as though, certainly for the that your financial background makes you a really, really strong candidate for the Budget Committee, for sure. Beyond that, you know, I really tried to understand, you know, everything that you said and everything you wrote down. And I had no experience. I had no idea what AAUW was. So I looked it up. And
Okay.
how would you, okay, I have a question, but I'll let you describe. How do you describe what AAUW is?
AAUW is American Association of University Women. When I moved to Grants Pass almost 19 years ago, I knew two people, my daughter and my realtor. And so, and having worked my entire life, right up until the time I moved here, retired and moved here, I didn't know anyone in town, and I didn't know anyone where I lived before. I only knew the people I worked with. So I wanted to find a group of women. I never had women friends. I worked. That I felt could add some value to the community. AAUW has as its basic premise improving the lot of women and girls. And in becoming part of AAUW, some of you may be familiar with Girls Rock, which is an event that we're now going to be in our 15th year. I helped found that with the idea of helping girls realize that they can do science, technology, engineering, and math. And when they do that, if they study it in college, they can get good-paying jobs and maybe bring those good-paying skills back to this community. So that was one of the things that I focused on for probably 12 out of the 15 years. I stepped back from that a couple of years ago in order to concentrate on some other things.
Okay, so thank you. And Girls Rock is a pretty awesome.
It is pretty awesome. We've
event.
had almost 2,000 girls go through that event.
I believe it. I know that. I know so many girls who are excited beyond belief when for that whole weekend, and it's a great thing. So the thing that I was a little bit concerned with regards to AAUW is that it seemed to focus, obviously, as you just said, on women and girls, and you would realize, of course, as a city councilor, that it would be your responsibility to be concerned with the equality for all people, right? Not just women and girls. Okay. Well, it just seemed like you had a lot of 3 times as you had a lot of time and effort you put into that particular thing. So that's why I'm focusing on it. But you get that it's city council is bigger than that.
When you get involved with one organization,
Right.
it tends to kind of grow. And those were the things that we focused on. Of course, AAUW did Kitchen Tour, provided scholarships, thousands and thousands of dollars of scholarships to RCC. We've done a lot of other events, kind of lower key in the community. But yeah, I mean, it's trying to improve the overall livability of the community.
Great. Thank you.
Perfect. Eric, and then Indra.
Thank you so much for coming, and I really appreciate you applying for the position. It's very important. My question is, have you thought of about any policies you're interested in seeing the City Council enact, repeal, or revise? And if so, what is it, and what would you propose?
It's a good question. There are, of course, one of the biggest problems facing us right now is the homeless situation. And so the policies supporting both the community and the homeless part of the community are going to be very, very important. And how we address those, of course, is in the public eye, not only locally, but statewide and probably nationally again, unfortunately. I think that improving, I want to see the quality of life for everybody improved in town. So policies that we have that affect housing, that affect transportation, that affect the economic viability of our small businesses, making it easier for them to be in business, I think are all important issues that we need to address.
Go ahead, Andrea.
How do you perceive the city council's relationship with administration,
With
city administration?
city administration, how do I perceive the council's relationship with the
Yes.
administration? The city administration is very important in the running of the daily aspects of the city. The councilors, from at least what my perception is, you set the policies and the guidelines and the directions. You do that through your strategic plan, and you do that through the development of the operating plan, which is the budget primarily that's coming up pretty soon. So you're setting the direction, and the administration is carrying that out on your behalf and on behalf of the citizens. Does that answer your question?
Perfect. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? All right. Oh, go ahead, Victoria.
I'm assuming that you really love Grants Pass. Could you just tell us in your own words, what do you love about this town we live in?
I moved here from Texas, a very different part of the country. And it took me a while to get used to Grants Pass because I was used to flat country and seeing the horizon, and I felt a little hemmed in by the mountains at first. But I've come to really enjoy the fact that there's so much available in the small town like Grants Pass. I lived in large cities, Washington, D.C., New York, Dallas, and there was always something going on, but you never really felt a part of it. And here I really feel a part of the city. This weekend I went to Barnstormers, and by the way, saw an excellent play. We went out to dinner. It's nice to have the ability to have the cultural event. And we've got a thriving arts community. I forgot about the Museum of Art because I was there this weekend also. There's always something to do if you want to do it. If you want to be involved in the community, you can enjoy it both from a participant or you can get actively involved in it. And I enjoy that. I enjoy knowing what's going on in the community. I value the Daily Courier because how many places have a small newspaper reporting on local news? You may like or not like what you may agree or disagree, but I came from a place in Texas, which also became newsworthy after I left, Southlake, Texas, where events were going on in the school system that I wasn't aware of because they had no local reporting of any kind. We were 30 miles from the city of Dallas, and you got the Dallas Morning News, and you heard the Dallas news. You didn't know what was going on in your community. So I like being involved. I like the fact that we have so many small businesses here. You can find almost anything you need in Grants Pass, which is just amazing to me. And I think it's really important that we continue that tradition here.
Perfect. It looks like we got one more from Indra.
Along those lines, if you could pick the top 2 or 3, what would you say are our community's greatest assets?
It's hard to pick the top 2 or 3. Personally, for me, I love the library. And I do want to make a correction to my application because I said I was in the library district. I'm on the board of the Library Foundation, which is the fundraising arm for the district. The library is just a vital part of this community, and I'm really excited about the prospect of building the new building and helping kind of recharge the lower part of the southern part of the town. So that's a very important part of me. Our schools are very important part to me. I had 2 grandchildren who went through the Grants Pass School District, and unfortunately they're moved out of town, which is something that I would love to be able to address by, good paying jobs in town that would bring families back together once the kids go off and get their education. Those are 2 of the really important things to me, and then supporting the arts in the community, the artists, the musicians. We've got a really thriving music community as well. All of those things are so important in drawing the professional people to this town that we need to bring to town. We need the doctors, the lawyers, the nurses, those kinds of people are really going to add to this livability in this community as well. And we have to find ways to attract them and keep them here.
Perfect, thank you. Since we're doing dual application here, we're just going to run right into this. So you also applied to be a prospective member of the Budget Committee. So if you want to open up this, answer questions with just a statement why you would want to be on the Budget Committee and what you can bring to that, just really quickly, even if you reiterate some things you already said.
Well, as I said, at first I applied for the Budget Committee because there was an opening there, and obviously with my financial background, I thought I could add some value to that. And so I completed that application a month ago, and then the Ward 3 position came open. I realized that public entities, such as the city council or the city, is very different than being in private industry. But you still have to budget. You still have to meet your budgets. You still have to do planning. And the basics are still the same. It's what I used to tell the people who came into my classes at the Small Business Development Center. You got to understand the accounting. You got to understand the budgeting. You got to be able to plan and think about what's going to happen in the future and how that needs to be accounted for. So I just felt like my background, almost 32 years in finance, would be of benefit.
Perfect, thank you. Anybody want to give some more questions about the Budget Committee? Kathleen.
So thank you for applying, Nancy. Let's see, where am I? What is the most important financial issue facing the city, and why is it important?
Finding the income, the revenue, to support the programs that you have to do and that you would like to do. And balancing those two, which always have to be balanced, is very difficult. Our economic times are better today than they were certainly 10, 12 years ago, as evidenced by new businesses opening in town and some of the activities that are going on. But certainly that's an ongoing challenge, finding the revenue and then spending it in the right places to fulfill the needs of the government, as well as satisfy as many needs as possible, or desires, I should say, of the community. It's not easy.
Thank you. Rob.
So piggybacking on that last question, do you feel that it's a Budget Committee's Budget Committee member's job to prioritize and lead and decide where funds need to go, or do you feel it's the Budget Committee's members' job to essentially follow the strategic plan and follow what the City Council has requested of the Budget Committee?
It's a good question. As I said earlier, the council sets the direction and the priorities, and the administration carries those out. The Budget Committee members help to look at the numbers and see if they make sense, see if they're prioritizing the right things, and following through on what the council direction has been. It would be hard not to voice opinions, but that's not the job of the Budget Committee. That's the job of the council to set the direction.
Thank you. Eric, do you have another question? Thanks.
So as far as the schedule goes for this budget committee, so should you be picked for it, are you able to meet this schedule? I guess the typical is a Wednesday, and so typically the budget committee meets at least 3 times in April and May on Tuesday and Thursday nights. Additionally, throughout the year, there may be a special meeting, typically on Wednesday, at which your attendance could be beneficial. Are you able to make such a time commitment?
I would, and if I had any problems, with prior commitments, I would have to see what I could do to move them around, but certainly that would be a priority, being at the Budget Committee meetings.
Perfect. Thank you. Anybody else? Any final questions? All right. So I don't see that we have any other questions for you. Now, we have heard you talk about wanting to be Ward 3 council member as well as a budget committee member. We've asked a few poignant questions. Do you want to leave us with any parting words?
I just want to thank you for the opportunity to come today, and again for your flexibility in letting me come today. I'll be thinking about you next week when I'm hopefully sitting in 75-degree weather instead of 25-degree weather. And I just appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
Thank you. And thank you for your time.
Do you need me now to turn this off?
You just leave it on. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to proceed forward with our presentation. Will be taken over by Aaron here, and I'll give him the floor.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. I'm here to introduce the subject of designated sites for camping and resting today. So the reason why we're having this discussion is we're here to discuss site locations and ADA compliance in relation to a circuit court case against the city with regards to our resting sites that we had established and our compliance with House Bill 3115 and what's objectively reasonable when it comes to time, place, and manner for people resting in public spaces. The agenda today that I have for you is we're just going to briefly review the past sites that we've had, the current site that we have, potential future sites, not city-owned, potential future sites city-owned, and near-term temporary sites. And call to action today would be any direction council may be able to provide with regards to future camping sites. This is not an all-inclusive list. This list comes from staff taking a look at some of our infrastructure inventory, me listening to the mayor and council members on potential sites, and any suggestions that we've had from the public that may have been viable for us to bring forward for your consideration. There may be more out there, and that may come up during our discussion today. This is here today to provide you with some additional information and to see if that you would like or are interested in moving forward with any of these, or directing me to take a look at others in the future. So past sites, one of the past sites we had was 6th and 8th Street, which is right here next to where we're sitting right now in the council chambers. We did have a dumpster, we had a porta potty, we had some fencing, garbage, and some additional services there at the site. When the J Street site, when actually the 7th Street, I'm sorry. When the 7th Street site was opened, we were able to close the 6th and 8th Street site. Another site that we had open that recently closed was the J Street site. That was a larger site that we had, and that was closed just a few weeks ago. We also had, in the beginning, a while back, we did have a small location, Riverside West Park area. This is next to a building that U-Turn for Christ operates right now.
Excuse me 1 second, Clint. So we're talking about the sites, and that's fine. I don't know that everyone, all the counselors are necessarily fully understand why we're even talking about this. I spoke with, I think, five out of 6 of the counselors over the weekend, and I'd like to actually go back a half a step and talk about why we have to do this, and as you know, we had some discussions with our lawyer last week.
Yeah.
And I guess one thing that, as you're talking about sites, that immediately pops into my mind that I think that everyone needs to remember, as I heard it. Now, I'm just going to tell you what I heard, and people could tell me if they think that I heard it wrong, or I'm wrong, or does everyone understand? We can go back even further, but what we could be talking about is having to, well, okay, so we had a restraining order, right? We for whatever reason, our January 7th, when we changed our, what we considered to be reasonable as camping sites, we changed that, we got sued, and a judge came in and said, okay, well, you know, in the meantime, while this lawsuit plays out, he hits us with a restraining order that says you can't enforce any of your exclusions and so forth. And we have an opportunity now to potentially go back to the judge. And correct me if I'm wrong, anyone correct me if I'm wrong, we have an opportunity to go back to the judge in the next week or so, week or two, go back to the judge and essentially make a deal with the judge and say, look, if we're a little bit more reasonable, or put it in the judge's mind, if we're a little bit more reasonable, he will withdraw the restraining order, and it will just be until the court case plays out, our suit plays out. The suit would still be in place, right? The suit that the homeless have brought against us for not being objectively reasonable. That suit would still play out even if we do these things. Again, if I'm wrong, let me know. So, and our attorney indicated that he felt that it could be up to 1 to 3 years for the legal cases to play out. I specifically asked that question. That was the specific answer. So whatever we do here today could be, or likely, or we would have to think about the fact that it could be 1 to 3 years in duration. Whatever temporary solutions we come up today, it's not temporary for a month or a year, or it could be, but this is what our lawyers seem to indicate. It could be 1 to 3 years. So so that's whatever we come up with today, if we come up with anything, and we may not. But so what we're doing now is to try to remove the restraining order. If we don't, that could turn into a permanent injunction, permanent, and again, until the court case plays out. Right? So that's why we're even having this discussion as to why we might want to expand what we're currently offering the homeless. Is that accurate, or does anybody else hear it differently than me, or think that it's different?
Councilor Pell, I think that's a relatively accurate statement with why we're discussing this today.
So if you all go back to the executive session you had, you guys we had a consult with our legal counsel. From that, we all understand that there is a temporary restraining order that was put in place with a 10-day window. It was advised that if we don't do anything, there's a possibility that that restraining order could stay in perpetuity. So we are trying to go forward and educate ourselves and come up with something to show that we're working on this, which we are. So this was, in my intention, to be an informational session so we can figure out what kind of inventory we have out there if we were to make a decision. So that's the basis of this. The foundation to start this workshop is informational only at this point, to get what we have in our arsenal, because you do, Rob, you do have 4 counselors that are new to what the city's inventory is, so it kind of gives us a little idea of what we have to play with, and I believe my intention was to expand the conversation from that foundation and, you know, further make our decisions. But yeah, this was basically just to kind of give a little bit of information first. Does that answer your question?
No, that wasn't my question. So I'm just, but as far as the 2-week or the 10-day window, the 2-week
Yeah,
window,
I'm not going to
the
get into
injunction-
answering legal questions for you in this
Okay.
in this aspect, because
Right.
basically we are all privy to that executive session. What
Just
I
wanted to
pulled
make
out
sure
of
we all
it is we
heard
have
it right.
we have 10 days. That's what I pulled
And the
out.
one other thing I guess I'd like to add is we were told that our Supreme Court case, there's no carryover.
Absolutely.
With what we're doing.
There
No
are 2
carryover
separate freeway
means
lanes.
nothing.
Yep.
Okay.
One
thank
freeway
you.
is going south, one freeway is going north. They
Thank you.
completely have no bearing on each other, which is basically written in all write-ups as well as within the lawsuit. And yeah, that was my interpretation as well from our counsel.
Okay, thank you.
Victoria, you got a question?
Well, I just wanted to add a little bit to what Councillor Pell had just mentioned, that the lawsuit is larger than just what's happened in the last month or the last 2 weeks, that it's something that has been in the public domain for at least 3 months. So I just wanted to add that. And also that I thought that most counselors were pretty much aware of why we are here today and what we were going through. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you proceed, Warren?
Certainly. So next, I just went over the sites that we actually owned ourselves, that we designated as resting sites. Now, what we have currently right now, to set the stage on where we are, we currently have a site on 712 Northeast 7th Street. It is right next to the police station. And we have some infrastructure there. There's an aerial of it. We have a porta potty and an ADA and regular porta potty. We do have a dumpster, and we have some services like a hand washing station, dog waste bag receptacle, and cigarette disposal site. This is a site that we are currently using in the one that the city currently owns. It's 0.32 acres. Now, I was asked to bring forward some potential camping site locations, and again, this is a not all-inclusive list. This is, as I mentioned before, a list that I heard from you as council members of, hey, what about this site? Or maybe someone from the public emailed council and said, hey, what about this site? Or the city staff said, well, maybe we should consider some of these sites. So the next sites that I'll be talking about will be potential camping sites either owned by the city currently or not owned by the city. One of the sites that was brought up was a piece of property, I'm sorry, that this is actually owned by the city. It's in the wrong category, but this is a piece of property just off of Beacon up here. It is a small half-acre piece of property. There is some aggregate there, and that is a location that someone mentioned this could be a potential site. Another potential site that had been discussed potentially in the past or had been brought up by someone was a location on 2207 Northeast Industrial Drive. This is a large structure that's 2.44 acres. It does have some improvements on it. It's fully paved, which is helpful when it comes to being able to provide the services and ADA compliance issues. It does have a warehouse, it has office space, it has covered outdoor area, and then also uncovered with the square footage there associated with that. That is something that is currently on the market for availability to lease. This is just a street photo of it from street side. No location that was brought up as a discussion point is on 2660 Northwest Vine Street. This is 0.78 acres. It is zoned industrial park. It is currently just outside the city limits, but it could come into the city limits if this is something council was interested in. Again, this is there on Vine Street, just a little bit northwest of the new storage units that are there. It is currently being utilized as a cargo box storage business location. One of the things that was discussed on this site was, this is a mock-up that was provided to me, and with regards to what a potential navigation center may look like if we were to utilize the site for that, which includes all the little boxes there, include different type of housing and dwelling units for the unhoused and some services that might be able to be provided there as a centralized location for navigation for many different service providers to use. Some other locations that the city currently owns, we have Northeast 7th Street. I know I mentioned that as our current site. There may be some issues in accordance with our lawsuit that we may need to consider. The largest one is ADA accessibility. In order to have this property on the list, staff's recommending that maybe we look at paving it as a parking lot. We were looking at some kind of future expansion use of that in some form or fashion, and having that as a parking lot may be good for inventory of our city infrastructure until such time that we have other need for it. Once paved, it could be utilized, and it looks like it likely be in compliance with an option for us to have for an urban campground. Another location that was discussed, I think this was emailed to you, council, is 3284 Foothill Boulevard. This is a property that is owned by the city. It is relatively far outside the city limits, with the outside of the city limits over here by Grants Pass Parkway, and this is out Foothill Boulevard. This piece of property is actually 3 different parcels, totaling 16 different acres. It's zoned rural industrial. It is in the county. This is just the front street side of 3284 Foothill Boulevard. It does not have any improvements. It is just a bare piece of land. Another piece of property that is city-owned that was discussed in the past but not acted on, but thought I'd bring it up as a discussion point also, is 850 East Park Street. It's relatively flat in nature. It is not paved, and depending on services provided, ADA accessibility issues may need to be discussed. Another piece of property the city owns that has potential for temporary, and most of these that I'm talking about here are temporary in nature, is 124 Northwest Midland Avenue. It's a former site of the hospital. This is about a ½ acre. It's shown in red from a further away aerial to a closer aerial. If the city was to designate this as a site, it could be potentially utilized, and it may be able to address some of the ADA access issues also, as the highlighted area in yellow is part of that property that the city has available to them, which is a large section of parking lot paved area that could potentially provide a service and ADA accessibility for a campground. Another location that is a potential for council to consider is 601 Southeast I Street. This is a business park zone. It's 0.3 acres. It's fully fenced. It's graded and level, but not paved. So paving and ADA accessibility issues may need to be discussed further if this site was something that council was interested in. This site is right next to our fleet and shop facility area. Those of you that went on the tour may have noticed this, and we tried to point that piece of property out to you when we did the tour. From a future site perspective, I mentioned 6 and A Street as it's currently right now being slated to be utilized, at least half of that for a staging area for us doing some work on City Hall roof project. So the whole site itself would not be able to be utilized for a campground. We may be able to use part of that. If it's not, if there's no site improvements, there may need to be some ADA future discussion items associated with that also. some near-term temporary sites owned by the city. We have one here, 850 East Park Street. This is a small piece of parking lot that is right next to the Parkway Fire Station. It is small, as I mentioned, but it is paved and would meet all the, I think, all the standards that we're looking for in order for it to be a campground that meets council's goals and provides opportunity to address any ADA accessibility issues. We are very limited when it comes to any kind of open paved locations or locations such as this, so there's very few and very small list here. Another potential area is just right next to us, maybe working with On-Track and the city to try to determine somewhere in the city parking lot area, in the On-Track parking lot area, if we could designate somewhere some parkings and close those down and have a temporary site there until we found an alternative site somewhere else. And then again, Northwest Midland might be something we can go to quickly to where we do have the ability to have some paved, asphalted area for the campground, along with a larger grassy area for also some additional camping. And then 712 Northeast 7th Street, mentioned that again because that is a site that council seems to believe is a decent site. We've had good luck with it so far. To the degree of being able to manage it to some degree because of its proximity to the police station. But one of the things we'd have to address is the potential paving of that site, and that would need to be a priority if you're wanting to continue to have that on the list of services for the unhoused and a place to rest. I was asked just to put in some numbers on what we're talking about when it comes to costs. These numbers were through November 24. It was a total of $156,000. We did incur a lot greater costs when it came to cleaning up J Street, and we've also been operating for an additional two full months, so there's some more dollars there associated with that. Just to give you an idea though, on J Street, the larger site where we have larger services, it was running us about $2,100 for porta potty service. On the smaller sites, it runs us about $1,100 per month. Garbage service is anywhere between $900 and around $1,200 per month. And then there's site cleanup maintenance that is always associated with those sites because there is the cleanup that has to occur on a weekly basis there. And then there's administration costs associated with having sites. The more sites we have, the more administration costs we have. The more costs we have also associated with patrol of those sites and just the general CRT team's time. So, Mayor, Council, that sort of concludes my presentation on potential sites, and I'm looking forward to hearing what your input is and if you have any additional sites you'd like us to explore. The concept is, as Councilor Pell mentioned, is we really need to take a look at and have a response to where we come up with some additional sites and additional time for individuals to rest as we work through this latest lawsuit.
Thanks, Aaron. I just want to make a couple reiterations here before we open this up to questions to Aaron. As we know, the legislation that we are battling at this moment in time, not battling, but trying to be in compliance with, specific verbiage is time, place, and manner. So at this point, I wanted to start with place, and we can work with time after that discussion. But the intention of this workshop was to present to everybody, whether you knew it or not, what was available. There was a couple new sites that we came up with. So at this point, if you want to have any questions directly related to the sites available, we can excuse me, ask Aaron of those, and then we can go into discussion a little bit later. Rob?
Yeah, so directly on that, I know that in the past, Aaron, you had mentioned that you didn't feel that the Midland, Washington, because it was purchased with URA dollars, would be appropriate use for that would not be any sort of homeless shelter or campground or whatever. So my question is, if we were going to use that property, would we as the city have to repay the URA district for the portion of that site that we'd be using?
Thanks for the question, Counselor. I think these sites that have all mentioned to you today are all temporary in nature, and some of them would hopefully be short-term temporary in nature. So I don't think from a financial perspective there would be anything that we'd need to be concerned with when it comes to reimbursement of the Urban Renewal Agency. If Council had a decision to reclassify or reutilize the property on Washington and instead of having it as mixed use, residential, whatever you may want to do, if you wanted to designate a portion of it for permanent siting of a campground, then we may need to look into that because that may not fit the definition of housing in our Urban Renewal Agency.
Along, also with regards to fitting in with Clint's desire to have us just be talking about different places, to me that immediately kind of segues into, I know that Chief Hensman mentioned that one of the, or two issues that he kind of saw with J Street was that it was a little bit out of the way, so it wasn't easy for the police to monitor during their normal rounds. But he also said that he felt that it was really too large. It was really unwieldy. The size of it was too big. So, but as far as something being out of the way on any of these, it's not a completely separate question as to what degree of monitoring or management would council have in mind. So anytime I'm looking at any of these locations, I can't look at that as a separate discussion for what level of monitoring or management that might be required for a given site. So I'm not sure where we go with that, but again, the sites themselves as an isolated concept is almost meaningless to me unless I know what we're thinking about with regards to potentially budgeting for monitoring or management.
Yeah, that's a good point. Each site is going to have its own unique characteristics based on what's best for these sites and it being a campground. The issue that we're dealing with right now is that all of these sites would be relatively unmanaged in nature if we were to operate them the way we've operated our past ones, which does require some security issues associated with that. J Street, of course, 7th Street, of course, is really close to the police station, and from a monitoring standpoint, we have some of that. When we had J Street, we did have a mobile camera unit there, so to help with security. We also contracted with concierge for additional security. So depending on where these sites go, I think that we would need to consider from a cost perspective utilizing our security trailer, camera trailer that we have at one or more of those sites, along with the potential of adding some additional security measures associated with that when it comes to patrol.
So a question, I guess, more directed to the chief, because I think he touched on this last week. You kind of indicated that, and Aaron just did also, that the 7th Street site was somewhat, we'll say, easier to keep a handle on because it happened to be next to where your guys are going back and forth on 7th Street, et cetera, et cetera. So in your mind, would, say, the 7th Street require, see, I look at management as one level, and I look at monitoring as kind of a lower level, less expensive. Monitoring to me is someone, someone driving by occasionally and taking a look at it. So whether it's 6th Street or 7th Street or whatever, would you look at that as a different level of monitoring required than you would at some of these others? In other words, could we get away with lower cost monitoring at, say, 6th and 7th than some of these others that are a little bit more out of your normal route?
Pragmatically speaking, yes, to your answer.
So that one potentially could cost us, we might not need someone to monitor it so often, whether it's once an hour, maybe it's once a day or twice a day or whatever, or maybe in that site, maybe we don't even need to hire anyone because the police headquarters are right there.
Yeah, and the reason I say that too, and I think it's a good point, Counselor, because the way we have our security cameras set up around our facility, we can actually enhance its range quite a bit. For example, when we had folks at the A Street across the street here, we were able to utilize our surveillance system to adequately look at A Street as well as right in front of the PD.
Thank you.
Sorry, Kathleen?
Aaron, could you put the last screen up? We didn't get to see the last screen.
The call to action?
No, the last screen. Well, the last, yeah, there's another page of call to action that didn't get shown. The alternatives. There's a place called alternatives.
Yeah, that's purposely not being shown on the screen. Do you have a specific question of
Yeah.
something?
Yeah. So I'm wondering, it's fine that we're looking at all these sites, but there was also a alternative to take the negative route, which says allowed everywhere except where council defines, plus reduced risk and ADA argument. I'm wondering why we're not looking at that as well.
So basically, the intention of right now, and I apologize. The intention right now is we're dealing with the three items I said earlier in regards to this law is time, place, and manner. So we're dealing with time at this point to build a foundation. We will go into further depth, and that would fall underneath manner, is what I'm considering. So if we can kind of get past this informational part, you guys ask questions about potential sites. Rob's questions were great to bring more attention to how the police can deal with this. So I apologize for my voice. So I just kind of want to stay focused a little bit on place, and then we'll expand the discussion later, if that makes sense to you. So we're not leaving you behind. We're getting to that. I do have kind of a rhyme or reason on how we want to play this out, if that's okay.
And if I can also add to the mayor's comments that the general direction from a standpoint of how can we, in a most timely fashion, address this this restraining order, and in a timely fashion where it doesn't become an injunction. Because my understanding is council is not looking at the current restraining order as becoming an injunction. The quickest way in dealing with that is to not change our current status of being positive, saying this is where you can go. We have codes and ordinances in place that state this is where you can go. It's easy for us to add, change, or modify those sites by just resolution and doing it quickly. We can have that for you and ready to go at a special meeting this week if necessary. If you were to change your policy and go from a positive to a negative where it's you can't go here and you leave everything else open to interpretation, that's going to require a code change, which is going to require us to go in and make some modifications to our code and our ordinances and get those adopted. That's going to take more time. And that's not to say we can't move forward in that direction if that's where council wants to go. We would be more than happy to do that. There's pros and cons with both. But it's recommended due to the nature of the lawsuit that we're in right now and moving forward before it becomes an injunction and it's just a restraining order, that we make minor modifications now to our current code by adding sites and addressing time. And if at a later date you want to look at a change, which a later date can be as soon as you make a decision for us to open up additional sites in time, then we can go ahead and look at what you mentioned as the negative versus the positive. So that's the approach that we're trying to address today.
Indra, and then Joel.
So I understand what you're saying as far as we need to take quick action. So my concern is what you said earlier in response to Councillor Pell's questions or comments, is that because of the larger lawsuit, we would be stuck, quote, for 1 to 2 years. So if the decision we make now is that, I guess you should clarify for me, are we stuck in that decision for 1 to 2 years with minor modifications, or can we turn things around and look at something totally different?
You have the ability to turn things around and look at things different. I'm not going to go into the details of the lawsuit. That's more of an executive session discussion that I don't think is appropriate for what we have today as a discussion point. My understanding was, coming out of the executive session, is that we were trying to, in a timely fashion, address something so this restraining order does not become an injunction. In order to do that in a timely fashion, we need to look at the current code that we have in place and adding additional resting sites in time. And once that's done, we can move forward with some of the questions that both you councilors have just addressed with maybe changing our code, which may have an impact on the lawsuit, but that's not something that I'm prepared to discuss today with you, and that is an executive session discussion.
I want to add to that too, is basically I'm taking this under the lens that this is going to be this is kind of a lump of clay and we're molding it as we go. So everything that it's going to be up to you when you make your decisions, whether you put time limits on them, where you put sunsets on them. You don't think, it's going to be ever evolving, I guess would be the simple answer to your question. And so don't feel that you're back up against the wall, that you have to make this life-altering decision right this second, and that's going to be in perpetuity. This is going to be an ever-evolving thing. So we're trying to continue our actions going forward is what I'm trying to help you guys promote to do. Rob?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Clint. I'm not sure, but I think the heart of Indra's question might be maybe a little different, meaning that, and it's unfortunate that we don't have a city attorney here today, but if we had whatever changes we make to get out from under the restraining order, we could change any of that, but the bottom line is we're going to have to pass some kind of legal scrutiny to do it. And it's not just going to be just up to us. In other words, if we make an agreement with the judge, so to speak, to get rid of the restraining order by certain actions, before we can change those actions, that would also, I would imagine, and I'm not an attorney and we don't have one here today, but I would imagine we'd have to go back to a court and say, geez, can we undo some of these things we promised to do to get out from under the restraining order? So yes, I agree that council, can essentially, we can mold this as we go along, as you said, but it would also have to pass legal scrutiny because we'd be making an agreement with the courts, whatever we decide in this particular situation to get out from under. So it's not like we can just do it. We would then have to also, it would have to be considered objectively reasonable at some point by somebody.
Correct, and I think I can say this without stepping over any bounds here, but the law, SB 1335, objectively reasonable, has never been put through the legal court system. We are the first. So if you take that in premise from a layman's term, we're on an island. We're the test subject, so we don't know how we're going to fix this, so we're doing our best to try to come up with a good game plan that we feel, underneath guidance from our legal counsel, that would be a good test subject, I guess is kind of the way I'm taking it. Sorry, I missed you, Joel. Did you have some questions?
Actually, I have more of a statement, so maybe I should just hold mine.
Sure, let's keep it to questions to Aaron, so then we can have him sit down and we can get into discussion. Anybody else have any more questions pertinent to the, Indra, go ahead.
Aaron, I didn't catch on the industrial drive, is that one we own or no?
Industrial Drive, let me look here. Industrial Drive.
Oh, I did have a question.
That was one that we do not own.
Okay.
It is on the market for lease.
Okay, and so there were several that we don't own. On the properties that we don't own, do we know for sure that they're willing to lease or they're open to lease? And is that the only option, is leasing them?
The properties that were presented, sorry, Aaron, have potential, the properties that aren't owned by us that have been presented today, yes, have potential to be taken over by us, but any further discussion, whether they're lease or, that's just not the time or place to do that now. But yes, we wouldn't have presented them to you today if they weren't available.
I have a just real quick, I'm sorry, Joel. So when you were talking about industrial drive, so just to add to what Indra was saying, the 2207 Northeast Industrial Drive, and then you showed a picture of it, but it's a different address. So I wanted to clarify, and it says 1990 Northwest Washington. So maybe I've got a photograph missing, or the address is wrong. It's just a clarification question.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah, I'll have to check my notes on that.
Yeah, you are right, Victoria. They are two different addresses. I believe the aerial view one is the correct address. I think the frontage street photo is, it's the neighbor. I think the picture just got swapped differently. Just to clarify, it's not two different places. Yes, Joel.
I did have a question. So any of those sites that would be available for purchase, are they a good site for a future fire station?
I believe that's probably something that we're not, of what sites that you're talking about, Joel? I'm not seeing a site
And any
that,
sites that we don't own that you would, that was proposed, I'm not saying that we're going there, but they're expensive. And so to me, if they served another purpose that the city's going to need in the future, such as a fire station, so do any of these sites, and you're probably not prepared to answer that.
no, that's not a question that we're prepared to answer today.
Your foresight is commendable, but you're way out ahead of us though there. But yeah, I think, yeah, it's not.
There are other properties that are better suited for a fire station that we would recommend besides the ones that are in front of you today.
Yeah, I understand that. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Eric, and then Indra.
On the 124 Northwest Midland one right there, I see that I had a question in terms of the other properties surrounding it, if that's the city property as well, like the one just north of it. I don't know if you can bring up a picture of it.
Sure, I've got, so the 124 Northwest Midland, we have the properties that we own on this is the red designated that I have here. Oh, let me go back and, I don't know what happened to my cursor. There we go, hold on.
Are you asking what we own?
Okay, so we own these three parcels. We own this parcel. We own all of these parcels up in here. So it's
So that one that you're on right now,
this,
the curved one right there.
Yeah.
In the interest of keeping it small, would it be a better option than the one that you have designated? It's
yeah,
kind of
the
up and
reason
out of
why
the way.
the one that we have designated here would be chosen over this one is this is much more visible and easier to patrol by driving by. It also has the ability of accessing some paved area. Here you do have a slope and you have some other things that does make it not as visible. And there is no improvements on this site, where at least there's some improvements on this site. And this site is all flat. And this side does have, it's a little rougher.
So that, the bigger one, the rectangular one that you have identified there, would that be the size of it, or can we make it smaller? Because it's speaking with the chief, I'm not sure about this particular one, but the smaller it is, so to speak, the easier it would be to manage, whereas if it was a J Street size camp, it'll be a lot harder to manage, and we get a disaster that was. So I guess what I'm asking is, are we limited to that, or can we make it smaller? And if so, why not just bring it up north to that curved one that I identified up there?
So you can make it smaller, Counselor, and it's all ultimately from a size perspective, what's objectively reasonable. You're right, the larger they are, if they're unmanaged, the more difficult it is. Also, the more time that they're allowed to rest, it also becomes a little more unmanageable from an unmanaged perspective. So the site up here, it would create more security challenges than this site here. Safety and security challenges here than here. Also, there is no improvements here where we do have improvements here. That's why this site is chosen over this site.
Thanks. Indra?
So it seems like with the larger parcels, we could section those off if we wanted to make them smaller.
Most
correct?
definitely. You can
Yeah.
say, you know, half acre less, third of an acre or less is what you're looking at. And that could be, we're not needing to know exactly the square footage of the site that you're choosing, but the site location's the key. We could fence off whatever section of that property that we so desire.
Okay, and I'm sorry, for Chief Hensman, so you said the J Street was hard to monitor, although it's right in town, but is that because it's tucked in there with one entrance, and is that what made it hard, that you couldn't drive around it or by it, or?
So just quick clarification, when it comes to management of anything from a public safety perspective, we'll figure it out. We have a professional law enforcement group. We will definitely take care of whatever the council wants and the city needs. That particular location was just odd in general, and it was pretty huge. And it was difficult to get back there. People saw us coming. The folks that lived within that community, everybody knew when the cops were coming. So I think that fits a good answer for you there.
Okay, Kathleen?
From our experience up to this point, I thought that the community was, and we also were looking at keeping this not visible, not out in plain sight, where when people drive by, whether tourists or coming home from work or anything, that we would, respect that and try to keep it more, so I would probably be looking at sites that were more indiscreet.
Thank you. Any other people have any questions in regards to the property? We will have time to start to go into discussion. I just want to make sure that we get all the information we can out of Aaron before we let him go. Rob?
So once again, I don't know if we ever got any kind of even general consensus, let alone definitive opinion. The Foothill Boulevard site, the fact that that's outside of the city limits, the fact that we don't have normal police patrols, that's outside of our police jurisdiction, is that going to buy us anything when we go back to a judge to try to make a deal? The fact that that's outside the city limits, is that going to help us in any way? Because we've discussed this several times. I don't remember any definitive answer to that question.
So, Councilor, it's a great question to clarify. Maybe checking some of these properties off that don't even think that might help the case. As you know, in moving forward, when it comes to this, we're looking for additional space and additional time. And when we're talking about additional space, we're talking about additional space that meets the standards of what's objectively reasonable. Objectively reasonable, including ADA access, et cetera. So this site here would probably be one of the more difficult ones to be an actual tool to provide to our attorney to go back to enter negotiations because of its proximity. We have no patrol or response to it. There is no ADA access at all. The site is fully unimproved. It's not level. This would require a large pull of resources, I think, in order to make it a tool that we can successfully use.
Victoria?
I would like to discuss the property at 2660 Northwest Vine, and I have I think it's a three-part question, but I guess the first question then would be, can you sum up, either Mayor or Aaron or both of you, how this particular site fits well in terms of the staying order for time, place, and manner?
Well, I can address maybe some of how it might address that. If we were to acquire this property through a lease or a purchase or something along those lines, there are a few benefits to it. One, it is with an annexation, it'd be within the city limits. but it's just surrounded by this city at the moment. It does have, and you can sort of see here, it does have improvements on the property that will provide for ADA accessibility. So it has space, it has ADA accessibility, and if it was brought into the city limits, then it would provide the opportunity also for us to be able to service that. So the other parts of the of this order that we're under would need to be discussed from a council perspective, which is the time. But I think this would be a site. Now, the whole site would be huge. This is not a site where we would, if we own this and it was unmanaged like we've done the other ones, we would not be able to open up this whole site. It would need to be a very small piece of this. This ultimately would have the potential of a growth of a navigation center or something along those lines, where if other nonprofit agencies serving those that are homeless this could be a future site that would provide what was provided to me here. The mayor happened to get a copy of this for me, where someone has put this together as a potential option for a community navigation stabilization location. And I don't know, Mayor, if you want to answer any of the rest of that.
Yeah, so basically, one of my intentions of bringing this to you guys is bringing this property was a collaboration of a few of us up here and some community people. It has a lot of potential. It has some serviceable buildings currently on it. There's a lot of asphalt areas on it. And then I look at it like, if you are trying to, this is my personal thinking, if you are trying to solve a problem, this would be, could be a future test case for, like as Aaron's saying, a navigation stabilization center. I mean, it has all the potential to go forward where you could, I mean, I would envision all your nonprofits, you know, collaborating and working on the site. It's big enough for everybody. You could, you know, it's got enough space so you could have different levels of service throughout the whole site. So, I mean, it's just, I look at it like it's got a lot of potential. And again, bringing this site was a collaboration between a couple of us up here, as well as community members bringing it to us. So we wanted to present it to you guys as kind of like something that has a lot of, you have to look ahead in the future on for this one. So that was how I explain it. And then if you have more questions.
So I'm guessing the answer to time, place, and manner with this particular site right now would probably be a positive with regards to, okay. So then my other question with this particular site would be, does the city have to have anything to do with this? So I'm imagining that we would have to, if it was brought into the city, provide, you know, the utilities to it or whatever. But then beyond that, does the city need to be involved in this whatsoever? And so would that also be a potential for us to satisfy the community when they're wanting us to not be a part of this whole solution, to help be a part of it, but not to manage it at all, if that makes, I think you're nodding your head, so I think you understand.
Yeah, I think, Councilor, your line of questioning is painting that picture of this, like the mayor mentioned, has an opportunity to be not just a temporary site for the city to utilize, but actually a stabilization navigation center where the nonprofits would run and operate this, and the city would have the ownership of, one, purchasing or leasing the property, and ultimately allowing these and helping to facilitate these nonprofits to come together to serve the homeless. It wouldn't be anything different than a number of communities throughout the state of Oregon that I'm aware of, where the city may own the property and they may lease it to one nonprofit service provider for $1 a year. and then they operate the facility, and that's the only city that's what the city provides, is they provide a spot, and they've done that at a reduced cost, $1 a year, and then they're able to get the stabilization navigation center running. So that would be, I guess, maybe as you were starting your line of question, a perfect world type of scenario?
I think, yes, you're getting, yes, I think so. And then would that also alleviate the city from entanglement in further lawsuits? Or I don't know if it's appropriate time to talk about that, but would that help us along the line of that?
That's like crystal ball looking. I mean, we would love that, but we don't know. I think this has a beautiful opportunity to go forward with that, but I don't, I'm trying not to put words in your mouth, but I think you're going to say the same thing. It's kind of, that's like looking too far forward. But you can answer, sorry.
I think any steps like this, like we're talking about right now, is a step in the positive to help show that you as a council and the policy board are being objectively reasonable and making objectively reasonable decisions when it comes to time, place, and manner and compliance with Oregon revised statutes. And this would go a long ways towards that message.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have one very, hopefully quick question about this particular site. Could the city also just provide, if it were brought into the city, could we just provide services to it, and then another agency, a nonprofit, could eventually buy this? The city wouldn't even have to own it. We just would be the people who hooked it up to water and things like that.
Yeah, you're right. We could be the ones that, say, for instance, offer a long or short-term lease to a nonprofit, and many times those nonprofits become successful because they ultimately, once they have a site, they start to get federal and state funding to operate the site and to provide those services. And then they start to get to a point where they want to start investing in the property. Well, we're getting this grant. We got a $500,000 grant. We want to put this infrastructure on there, but we don't own the property. So what do we do? And we would hate to lose our investment. And so then those discussions, as this program grows from being an infant to a toddler to an adult, you start to get to a point where getting into the teenage years or whatever, these nonprofits are getting to a point where they're like, we would like to actually own the property. And many times there is a transition of property ownership from the city to those, and then they own it and they can operate that.
Thanks, Aaron. We can go further into that discussion too. Rick, you had a question?
Thank you, Aaron. When you look at time, place, and manner, can there be two sides of the coin as well as not only looking at choosing the property, but on the south property line here are all residences, on the west property line are all residences? Would that have to be included in our considerations?
Well, that's a policy decision on your end. I think when you're making decisions on locations, whether it be temporary or more full-time in nature, whether it be a small site or a site for a stabilization center in the future, those are policy questions that you need to ask yourself, and council should have those discussions on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Kathleen.
So maybe just for a little clarification, I hear you say this is a potential for the future, but we need to do something now for temporary. So what does that temporary exactly mean?
So ultimately, what our legal counsel has asked us for is more space and more time. So say, for instance, this. If we were able to gather this and have ownership of this through a lease or a purchase within a acceptable amount of time, and designate a portion of this or the whole thing based on what else, however it works out in the future, could this be an option? It could be if we were able to move quick enough on it. If not, we need to be looking at some of the other locations, like maybe some properties that we currently own that are in this slide, or others that council may want to explore, to where we can open up some additional space and time in order to respond to this lawsuit. If that answered your question.
Sort of, but I'm wondering about the temporary piece.
Mm-hmm.
We need something temporary.
Oh.
Just like J Street was temporary. Yeah. 7th Street is temporary. Explain that a little.
Thank you. That's a great question. So we do not have to have the word permanent in our response when it comes to time, place, and manner. The time, place, and manner that we provide, if the city is taking ownership of some of that time, place, and manner, can be temporary in nature. So far, the only thing we've offered has been temporary in nature from a city perspective. If a nonprofit comes in, totally independent of the city, and starts a program that benefits our time, place, and manner that we could count as part of the services for our community, then that's only a positive. And I think that's partially why the city has tried to set up this as temporary in nature from a spirit of this perspective, because it's not just a city issue, it's a community issue. And there are a lot of nonprofits and other agencies that have a higher, more focus on those individuals that are homeless versus the city. And so many cities have always partnered in some form or fashion for those services. So us setting up temporary sites, I think, is the concept originally was, let's set up some temporary sites, so maybe to provide some time for the community to come together to help solve this, what's objectively reasonable.
I would almost definitely define that as more we're incentivizing. I think Joel Ho was up there first.
You know, I'm going to hold my comments.
Okay, yeah, sure. Question, Victoria?
I just want to be certain that this particular site, again, could be utilized fairly quickly, we think. So it could be a part of taking it forward to the judge and saying this is a, so this one is definitely a possibility. We could consider this now.
Could you go back one slide to the
Certainly, Mayor.
current one? Yeah, so this site here, it has some buildings, some carport-style buildings on the bottom. There's one big, giant open shop area in the middle. Basically, it's an open-air cement floor. There's office shop building there as well. All that between the buildings is concrete. There's asphalt all over there. So, yeah, this could do a makeshift temporary site very easily with a little bit of fencing. Did you have a question now? Okay, and then Eric.
And maybe you've already answered this, Aaron, with the use of other sites that would not be permanent. If you just have one site, what does that mean to time?
So time is second, the one site and the time. I'm not sure of the question, your correlation, your question, but the city is our legal counsel has requested that we have more than one site, if that answers your question. We need more than one site.
Eric.
Was there a cost associated to this? What I think.
Yeah. A cost is a great question, Counselor, and the cost associated with this and the negotiations of either a lease or the purchase would be executive session discussion, and I think it'd be more comfortable if I get direction that this is, if you're interested in this, you provide me direction to look further into it and get that, and I would report to you in an executive session.
Perfect. And then the next question is the surrounding areas. Do we know what the surrounding areas are? Can we elaborate on that?
They're
as far as the housing?
They're residential here on this side. I'm not sure the zoning here, maybe Brad knows off the top of his head, but this is, right here, this is Business Park. So this is likely residential of some sort, and I'm not sure what this might be.
It's R3 zoning.
It's R3. So it's residential zoning around that.
Just wanted to also get the police chief's, Chief Hensman's take on this location, what his thoughts are on it, as far as practicality, all the things we discussed earlier.
I don't have a lot of thoughts on this particular one. This is, I'd have to sit down and think a lot about it. I think you guys have been hitting on all the right answers, and Aaron's been hitting the right questions for something of this size and magnitude, but obviously we'd work together to make it fit.
I think you're up now, Rob. Thanks.
So when you sent this to council email the other day, didn't this site have a price tag on it? Is this, in other words, this site's for sale?
Oh, this site, what my first draft had on it was just the real market value according to the tax assessors.
Okay, and we know it's for
And
sale?
that's public, I can give you that number, but.
Sure.
It's like 1.9 million from a tax that's what the tax assessors has it as a real market value.
And we think it's available? It's for sale?
That would be a question for the mayor. I think he can provide a little more information for you on that.
This was presented to us by a community member who is selling it. It is for sale. I don't know if it's MLS listed yet, but I have had small conversations with the gentleman just to verify that it is for sale and what his intentions are in bringing it to the table, so. Okay, do we have any more specific questions for staff or Aaron in regards to properties? Okay, thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, Mayor, Council.
And at this point, we'll bring it back to any further discussion between yourselves. Joel.
So being a planner from a long time ago and over a lot of projects, it looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 evaluation criteria that I heard the whole council come up with. I added one. It was called, what is the cost of this option? What are the monitoring challenges? Rob brought that up. What is the risk associated with the legal case and removing the injunction? That varies by the different sites. What is the fire risk? That wasn't brought up, but like the one site over there east of the interstate definitely has a fire risk. Eric brought up the impact on the surrounding area as an evaluation criteria for all the sites. Whether or not it's outside the city limits is another evaluation criteria. And then the last one I put in was what is the future use of the site if it's no longer 20 years from now going to be a serve its function that it would serve today. So I'm going to be looking at our options in terms of those evaluation criteria and list them and then try to make a rational decision of what is reasonable.
Thanks, Joel. Actually, thank you very much for bringing those points up because I think that's amazing. Yeah. Anybody else want to weigh in? Go ahead, Indra.
This is discussion, right?
Correct.
So I think that Vine Street has a lot of potential, and I like that. I understand it's around some residential neighborhoods, which is always tough. But I think as we go forward, we have to do something quickly, and it's as long as it sounds like everything's going to be temporary. My big thing is keeping anything that's more permanent than like 30 days to get us out of this restraining order out of our business corridors, off of 6th and 7th Street and off of that. So this would satisfy that for me, because that's mainly what I'm looking at is if we're going to draw business in and make our city start to look better, we can't have these on our major thoroughfares.
Thank you. Kathleen?
I agree with Indra. I think that for me, there's only 2 sites that would come into question.
Victoria?
If we were to be looking at the Vine Street, it seems like people think that maybe we might want to look at that. I'm not saying anybody does. But if we were to do that, would it be a site that would be sufficient, or would we also need to keep 7th Street open or not?
My take on, I guess my take on it is that we were directed to come up with a number of sites. So I would kind of take that as we would have to have 2 or 3 sites to start. And then I look at, I think what we'll do is we'll try to figure out how we can narrow this down a little bit to some different sites, and then we can each champion whatever. But I think the intention is to take care of our time, place, and manner. We're dealing with place at this point, is to kind of narrow narrow it down to, say, 2 or 3 sites, and then we can make a decision whether that's what we want to present to our legal counsel to present to the judge. That's how I interpreted the executive session, was to come up with 2 or 3 sites minimum.
Can we do that today, or
That's the
can we
intention,
direct
as I'm-
staff to do that today? I thought we had to make the decision in a meeting, but, so we can. All right, thank you.
Eric and then Rick?
Okay, so obviously, the more sites we have, the more cost there's going to be with that. And I'm seeing, I think Aaron mentioned, since November 2024, 4 months, we've incurred over $100,000 in services. So this is a big expense, and that is, to me, I think we should, regardless of what the lawsuit is talking about, we need to take caution in giving more than, the more sites we have, the more expensive it's going to be. So my take on it is maybe we just need to do 2 sites and not 3 or 4, because this is going to be a major expense that the city has to incur. And that's not just the city, that's the taxpayers that are paying for it if grants pass. And that is pretty, that's a lot to ask of the taxpayers, because now what are we going to be looking at? Who are we going to lay off if that happens? I mean, who knows how long this is going to stretch out? I don't want to lay off anybody. But this is a lot of money here, and we're just talking 4 months. So I think my point is, I would like to extend that info to the council to keep that in consideration when we're talking about multiple sites. So that's all.
Absolutely, Eric, and thank you for that. And I believe that we all will keep that in mind, because that is foremost, and part of our duty is to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars. So I think I had Rick next, and then Joel.
So when we're looking at 2660 Northwest Vine Street, the whole picture has me a little bit concerned. I can see consideration there, but part of the other aspect that has me worried, I want to say, or could be worried, if we can limit the amount of area that we're committed to using for that purpose is one thing, but this is industrial, and I realize industrial is also a candidate when you are locating a campground. But within the city of Grants Pass, we have a shortage of industrial property. If we start using it for other purposes than industrial, we're also limiting the opportunity for new industrial people moving in, because then all of a sudden that property is no longer available, or they don't want to locate there. So that's just another aspect I think we should keep in mind. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Rick. And also, too, we do need to be aware that within the industrial zoning that these homeless shelters are permitted, and one of the only zonings that's very acceptable to be in. So it's kind of a catch-22 on that, but I do appreciate that pointing out to the rest of the council. I had Joel.
So I see a proposed action being developed that accommodates those criteria and what we've talked about so far. And let me just throw it out there, and you folks can change it. We have 2 parts. We have an implementation, well, actually we have 3 parts. We have a implementation transition, we have a longer term strategy, and then we have in the future, which has a lot of uncertainty associated with it as far as what goes on. The transition, we need 2 to 3 sites, so we need the site by the police office, and we need 1 more site besides that, and we can do that immediately. I would like to put it right over here. I know that the roofing is going to occur. I don't know what the time is. I don't know how long that's going to take. But if not, then we find another suitable place for it. And then we pursue the purchase of the industrial land. It's an asset, so it just transitions cash asset into property asset. So the long-term cost to the citizens, you can always sell it and get your money back out of it, and the city's done that a lot with a lot of property. And then develop that in the longer term, and maybe even divide it into two places, two resting sites, so they can move from one side to the other, which seems kind of ridiculous, but that would satisfy the law. And then in the future, where the uncertainty is, because we don't know what the law is going to be like, we don't know what the future law holds, we don't know what the future economic development is, we got some property that we could use for social services if we need to, or we can convert it back to industrial land, or if that homeless situation gets solved by the state. And we move forward like we know what we're doing.
Thank you, Joel. So I see that as a proposal. So to be a little efficient on this, I want to ask you guys in two different approaches here. Do you want to go through the list and eliminate places first? Or Joel actually has a pretty good plan, which I would champion, and we go forward with that. So the question to you guys at this point is, do you want to go through the list here and eliminate it down to a smaller number? Or do you want to pick a few and go forward? I'm giving you the option to start eliminating properties, or I think Joel kind of hit it head on. I think exactly what I would actually agree to, but it's going to be up to you. So the question is going to be if we start eliminating properties, or set a couple properties, go forward. Rob has a question or a discussion.
Sure. So, and I appreciate that, Clint. I think it's probably where we should be starting to move. So the question I have is, right now, we have one site, and as we go through our list, we have two councilors here who basically said they want to get rid of that site, the 7th Street site, even though that's one that appears to be easier to monitor due to the drive-by aspect of it. So are we starting at 0, or are we starting at 1? If we believe we need 2 or 3, are we starting at 0, or are we going to take that spot away?
I actually didn't hear anybody say they want to get rid of 7th Street, so I think we're starting at 7th.
I thought 2 people said they didn't like that being on the main thoroughfare.
Sorry, I didn't hear that, but I was assuming we were going straight forward with 7th as being our anchor at this point.
That's what I thought, but I thought.
So we can do it either way, Rob, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but we do either way. We could just go through the list and eliminate them, or, I mean, 7th Street is in play at this point. If we take it away right now, I think that's a dumb move, personally. So I would leave 7th Street in there, but if you guys want to go through and eliminate to get down to a smaller number, what's the consensus here? Here, let's just do this, nod heads. Do you guys want to go through the list and eliminate? Up or down? Yes? Yes? No?
Sure.
No? No? Yes? Okay.
I wanted to clarify, if I could. I think what Joel said is he proposed 3 sites, 7th Street, 6th Street, and Vine. And so that's like a starting point.
Okay.
And could we start with those, and people could say, no, let's swap 6 for this? I mean, I like that idea.
I agree with you, Victoria. I thought that was a good starting point. I just don't want to go in circles. I think Aaron wants to add a few things, and then we'll make a decision which way we're going.
Yeah, I need to add a couple things that will help with your discussion if you're considering those 3 sites. So from a Vine perspective, I think it counts as additional space. I think it would also count to address some ADA accessibility issues. Those are 2 green check marks. The 7th site, it goes to address the space. It does not address the ADA accessibility. So you got 1 green check, 1 red check. A Street might not even address the additional space because we need at least half of that space for the roofing project, and it doesn't address the ADA accessibility. That site needs major work done in the wintertime. It's a pond out there. So it would require a lot of work, including stormwater management associated with it. 7th Street site would be recommended. We'd have to do some improvements. I'll work on that as best we can. We may have to come up with an alternative site while the 7th Street site is being worked on if we want to continue to address the 7th Street with ADA. So I would say that A Street really probably is not an option at this point. 7th Street is with modifications, and Vine Street seems to be an option. That's just my input.
Okay, Rob? And then Rick, sorry.
Maybe Jason's the right person to ask this question. So how long would it take to get some paving on 7th Street site?
I talked with Wade about this before the meeting, minimum of 3 weeks, but it could be a little bit longer depending on contractor availability and whether or not we had to do any stormwater modifications.
Second question to you is length of process from start to finish for the paving. So how long would 7th Street have to be shut down?
Probably 3 weeks, maybe 2 weeks for, because you got to bring in equipment, regrade it out, bring the surface back up, and then pave. So minimum 2 weeks, 3 weeks start to finish or more for the whole process of getting the contractors on board and drawings and all that other stuff. So 2 weeks plus for shutdown.
Okay, thank you. Rick?
So Jason, instead of doing a layer of asphalt, can't we consider possibly concrete or seal coat?
So concrete, yes. I don't know that seal coat will meet the intent.
No, it doesn't meet ADA standards.
It won't?
Nope, it doesn't.
Okay.
Sorry, I know ADA pretty front and backwards, so I know that that doesn't meet it. Sorry to interrupt, Aaron.
One other side comment.
Go ahead, Rick.
If we're coming up with a list, can we expand the list beyond 3, like have 5, and then have everybody give their input on 5?
That's going to be your guys' call. I really kind of want to get through this as efficiently as we possibly can, so, because we all, this is outside of our normal realm, so we want to make sure that we're being cognizant of everybody's time, and so. Indra, sorry.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I just wanted to address Councilor Pell a while back. I did express concern about the corridors of 7th Street, but also I do recognize that we have to act quickly, and that site is obviously a good one.
Kathleen?
Maybe this is also a question for Jason, maybe about paving. Do we have to pave the place that we choose? Like Midland, does that have to be paved if that's a choice?
Well, Midland, there was the option there that there is a lot of paved area already existing that would probably suffice for ADA accessibility with the grassy areas serving the non-ADA population. So there was already kind of a blend of both there that we felt were acceptable.
Okay, if everybody's kind of settled for a minute, let's just start going through and eliminating properties. So it sounds like 6th and A could be expensive to get up to speed, could be problematic in its current condition. So let's just go through and vote. To eliminate, yes or no, Rob?
Eliminate that one.
Eric?
Yes, absolutely.
Indra?
Eliminate.
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 Just keep going.
I would not. I'd just use it temporarily.
Eliminate.
Okay, we got a consensus to eliminate that one. So next is J Street. I hopefully this is going to be unanimous across the board. Eliminate? Yeah, let's just do that. Thumbs down or thumbs up? That's easier. Okay.
The other way.
Okay, I see pretty unanimous on that, so let's get rid of J Street. Next on the list was the Riverside Park piece, which would be the grass park piece next to the U-Turn for Christ building. I got a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got a lot of thumbs down, so let's just eliminate that one. Okay, 7th Street, we're going to hopefully unanimously keep that one in the mix. Sounds good, thank you. Potential ones that are not owned by us. So Beacon Street is the triangle one that's on the side of the I-5.
That one is owned by us. I moved it.
Oh, sorry, that is owned by us. Looks like it's gravel. It's very triangular, very small, half an acre, just up against the freeway, but there is residential next to it. Eliminate. Okay, looks like thumbs down, thank you. The Industrial Park, Northeast Industrial Drive, large warehouse building, Not owned by us, is only available for a lease option at this point. Washington Street is basically kind of what it's on. Up or down, we got maybe, I got more thumbs down. Okay, let's take that out. Okay, Vine Street, which is the larger industrial zoned piece, 7.8 acres. Thumbs up or thumbs down to keep it in the mix at this moment in time. Can be eliminated later if you want. I got majority thumbs up. Thank you. Moving along very quickly here, that was 7th Street again. Foothills Boulevard, city-owned property, but it is outside of city limits. I got a majority thumbs down, okay? Park Street. Well, I'm actually still unclear exactly where this one is, but.
It's behind the fire station.
It's behind the fire station at Parkway. There's a trail that goes underneath the bridge to Baker
Oh,
Park.
okay, now it is.
Looks like
850
there's
East Park
two.
Street.
Looks like there's two, though, there, one behind and one on the side.
Yeah, there's another one that we're highlighting that's paved later on.
Yeah, so this one is 850 Park Street. Yeah, so it's the grass unimproved, so it'd be basically between the fire station parking lot and the water. That's a pretty big thumbs down. Okay, Midland Avenue, which is the one piece of property that has some paving or some concrete paving in it that could be utilized for ADA, city-owned. Everybody know which one? And I got a majority of thumbs up, so let's keep that one in. That's Midland. 601 Southeast I Street, which is actually flat graded gravel right next to the
Yards.
the city yard. 1 up, 2 to 1, 2, 3. Rob, you want to weigh in on that one? Rob? It's kind of a tie, Rob. You got to weigh in, please.
For now, I would keep it in for discussion sake.
Okay, it stays in for now. Thank you, Rob. 6th Street done. Okay, so the additional Park Street one we were talking about is basically utilizing one of the parking areas offside the fire station. In or out? In 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. I got more thumbs up. Okay, that's a stay in right at this point. Okay, so for temporary use, kind of suggested would be A Street, 6th and A Street parking lot, kind of behind the on-track.
You know, I could try to explore that. I don't know what the possibilities are. I was just trying to think of something.
It does kind of seem pretty, I think I got more thumbs down, so let's get rid of that one. Okay, so at this point, we are down to 7th Street, Midland, Vine, the small Park Street, and I Street. So how many is that?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So we're down to 5, okay? So
Can you run through those again? We've got
So
7th,
we have-
Midland, Vine, and
7th, Midland, I Street, which is the graded lot next to the yard, the Park Street, which is the parking lot touching the fire station, and then Vine.
7. I think.
Yeah, 7th, that was kind of a, okay. So, at that point,
Oh, this one?
Can you repeat those, please?
Yeah, there's no I Street. There's also I Street there.
yeah,
So the ones going in order of the presentation was 7th Street, the current site that we have, Vine Street, Midland, I Street, and Parkway. The Park Street. Park Street. Mhm.
okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you have 5 properties. 7th Street, as Aaron reiterated, the negative checks on that is we do have to pave it. So we have a cost and a timeline that's going to be affected with that. Vine Street.
Clint, we never heard a cost on the paving, I don't think, did we?
We don't have a cost, we're still
Do we have an
exploring that.
estimate, or no? Ballpark? Cost to pave 7th? Okay, no problem.
I don't. I'll see if I can get one for you real quick, Counselor.
Okay, then we got the Vine Street, which could be serviceable very quickly, but is a big open space and has, it has pitfalls but yeah, that one could be serviced very quickly with fencing, serviceable very quickly with fencing, which should not be too much of a cost, but it is a purchase. The next one would be Midland. Midland has got open space, but it also has hard space, so it would take the ADA and the place. That would be a pretty decent one. Then you've got Park Street, which is pretty small, but takes care of the ADA. And then I Street, I Street was, yeah. Okay, so any discussion or to tailor this down, or how do you want to proceed forward? Go ahead, Victoria.
I would like to eliminate the Park Street because I remember we had a discussion about it before, and Fire Chief was explaining the slope and just the location, and that it might have some really big problems with that particular one. So I don't know if you want to speak to it or not.
So just to clarify, the Park Street one that we kept in the mix was just the parking lot, which is flat and paved, but super small.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Joel.
Well, I would support Victoria in that. The other thing is it's in the riparian or close to the riparian area of the Rogue River, which is a significant tourism and also a fire risk. And we've had several fires there in the past year, almost burned down several homes.
Okay. So we have, go ahead, Kathleen.
I was just going to ask Chief if he wanted to have some input on that.
What I was speaking about previously, and thank you, Counselor, is the Bakers Park area, but not specifically this parking spot for parking area for the temporary site.
Rob?
So without trying to be the fly in the ointment here, but I'm going to be the fly in the ointment for a moment anyway, are we thinking about possibly moving forward with any of these sites before any public feedback? I mean, we have kind of an emergency situation here with the restraining order. It's a very short time frame. And I realize that, but I'm just asking the question, are we actually making decisions here without considering any public input, is my question to council.
No. This is an informational session trying to get direction to go forward so we can get our legal counsel involved and then proceed forward on how we're actually going to have a game plan. Now, we're not making decisions outside of a public realm. This is actually publicized at this moment. Yes, the public does not have the opportunity to weigh in at this time, but again, this is an informational session where we're trying to make some decisions to narrow what type of plan of action we're coming up with. Indra.
And then, just to clarify, it's my understanding that we can, once we choose sites, we can limit or decide how many resting sites we want within those sites, correct?
Yes, this is an ever-evolving thing, and I'm trying to help you guys and give us a starting base here, and that's kind of the way I feel this is going. Anybody else? Okay, did you want to weigh in before I asked for that decision? You made a recommendation to take the Park Street out, so I was going to, unless you had more discussion, I was going to ask if we could do another thumbs up. Okay, there was a councilor that asked if we could take the 850 Park Street out, which is just a small paved parking lot right next to the fire station. Do I have consensus to take that out or keep it in? We're trying to narrow this down a little bit more. Take it out, thumbs up. Keep it in, thumbs down. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4 to 2. Okay, we're going to take it out. Thank you. So now we're down to 4 properties, 7th Street, Vine, Midland, and I Street. Any further discussion? what I would like to walk away from this informational session from is to have a consensus among you that we have a number of properties, whatever you choose, to present for staff to present to legal counsel, and that is kind of the basis on going forward on achieving our time, place, and manner. So basically, tripod one would be, we've got a foundation to start working on our place. The next topic would, before we leave today, I think would be we could discuss time, on how much time you want to give in each one of these places. I don't think we should change the time. I think it should be time. My suggestion would be time for each site would be exactly the same, if that makes sense. So at this point, we are at 1, 2, 3, 4 sites. Any further discussion to eliminate, or are we in consensus to keep these 4 sites in play? Rob.
So we've heard, I guess, from you, Clint, that theoretically Vine is available. Like, how solid is that? It's not even on the market. The price is high. We don't know what the price will turn out to be, but like, how solid is that? Do we know?
I had coffee with the owner, who was introduced to me by another community person, and he has full intention of basically offered it to me and said it was for sale. Gave me a flyer for that, so I do have a flyer. I have not distributed that because that's something that should be done in executive session because it does have a price associated with it as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you.
Okay, to move to the next step, we're either eliminate or we are sticking with 4 sites as our foundation for this plan of action. Okay, we are going forward. So to take care of one of our pillars of this time, place, and manner, we will choose to keep 7th Street, Vine, Midland, and I Street in play with the notion that we know that that Vine is not owned by the city. All the 3 other places are, so we at least have a decent foundation go forward. Last call, any further discussion on places? Okay, I kind of just want to round out the session with discussing time.
And on Mayor, on the time, definitely you can discuss today in open session, but in talking with legal counsel, time, if so desired, could be discussed in executive session. If you wanted to schedule a date for that, we could, in relation to time and how it impacts the lawsuit, but that's your call.
Thank you, Aaron. So that could be in consideration. Joel, question?
So I like that because we can get feedback from our lawyer-client privilege and see what, because he's dealt with it a lot.
Perfect. Is there a consensus to table the discussion of time to an executive session so we can get direct consult from our counsel? Okay, so with most people nodding yes, I will leave it to Aaron to figure out the next available time for executive session?
Yeah, I definitely will. I'll see if he does have availability for, and if we can wait until our next workshop, or if we need to meet sooner, I will get back to you and the council when that's determined.
Perfect. Okay. Last call for discussion on this. If not, we're going to move to agenda review and wrap this thing up. So the intention of this session was to kind of narrow down some places, and I think you did that. Hopefully you guys feel confident that you've got a good arsenal there. We're going to give that to Aaron. He can put that in the arsenal. Aaron will then consult with council to figure out when the closest time we can get an executive session to discuss place and time with consult with our legal, and we'll go from there. Okay? Indra.
I move that we don't do the agenda review and adjourn.
Second.
Since this is out of sequence, I'm sure that'll be just fine. So if you want to go, we got a first and a second. Sorry, Karen.
I just had a real quick question. We have next Monday 7 interview candidates for a budget. Do you want to, and 2 of them you've already interviewed, would you like to continue interviewing all 7 or just the 5? Okay.
So the question from Karen is, within our next session, we have 7 Applicants, 2 we've already heard from. Do you want to hear from all 7 or 5? All 7, thumbs up. All 5, thumbs up. Sounds like all 5. Thank you. So we did have a small motion on the table at the second to basically round out this and adjourn. Yeah, we got 3 or 4 seconds, great. Victoria?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Indra?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Thank you. Adjourned.
That direction greatly.
Yeah. No, and I thank you guys for everything. It was,
He was hurting. He was hurting.
I was just trying to be efficient, guys.